Basically, the problem that many people seem to have with me saying that worker automation is a step in the wrong direction is that they don't understand the main point of the video, which is what I say multiple times in the video, which is if you feel the need to automate something, you should first check to see if that is a band-aid for a bullet wound of a bigger problem in your game design. The core idea that I would say to take away from that video is not that it's super focused on a specific idea. You should like worker automation is bad. That's not the takeaway from the video. Worker automation is bad if the reason you're automating workers is because something is not interesting. The solution is not to automate that decision. The solution is to make that decision meaningful, and then you won't want to automate it because you won't be able to test for the skill of making the decision at the right time or making a decision interesting. You know what I mean? A lot of people in that video were confused because they were like, what do you mean? Surely, like, there's just no good decision to make about workers. Even though in the video I explained this many times. Clearly, I could have explained it better, is my takeaway from that. But I'm not really sure how I could have explained it better without literally restating things in the video. So I don't know. Supply is just some situation where you could reinvent supply to be something completely different than what it is now, and maybe it would be interesting. But currently, what is your choice regarding supply? Your choice is don't be allowed to train more units or build supply and engage with the system. There's not like a when do I build the supply depot, right? There is technically a when do you build it, but there's a limited number of things you can do with your resources. Like most of it is training units. There's some of it is building structures. And in most RTS games, you've got upgrades. We don't have upgrades. The more you design around your core spending being about building structures and training units and ascending up the tech tree with like higher tiers of tech and stuff, the less sense it makes to gate the spending on most, like you're spending most of your money on units at the end of the day, right? If you had to tally up all the units, right? It's really easy to tell this because it costs 150 minerals for a barracks, but you're going to be building more than 3 Marines per barracks. And so obviously that means, and obviously like the command center is 400 minerals. You're going to build way more than 8 SCVs per command center. So most of your money is going towards units. Why would you gate most of your spending behind a system that really only exists as a way to gate that, right? The biggest issue though with supply is actually, I think, something that happens. It's an obvious edge case that isn't, calling it an edge case makes it seem like it's uncommon. If you lose your supply, then you effectively don't have any way to get your money's worth out of the infrastructure you've built elsewhere. If I destroy a bunch of supply depots for my opponent, I don't care if they've spent hundreds of thousands of resources on a bunch of factories elsewhere, or barracks, or starports, or whatever. They're done. They can't actually use those materials at all. They have to reactivate them by building supply. But the supply might have been in a completely different area than the factory. So it's not even related to the location of the supply depot. The supply depot is this global resource that you need in order to be able to use your production facilities. Immortal does a weird thing with this where their supply structures are their factories. I don't really see the reason to do this because basically what it translates to is you build more factories so you can build more units, but they're like legislating that instead of you being able to build a lot of units out of 1 or 2 factories, you must build more factories. To me, that seems really silly because of course good players are always going to build more factories. So what's the point? But I guess basically that what they're saying is if you want like a 200 food army, you need, I don't know, 20 factories or something, whatever their conversion is, right? I don't really know why they would do that personally. I would just remove supply, and that's what I did. And the solution, like, you don't even notice it's gone, really? Like, when you first play Cosmonarchy Brood War. And then at some point you realize you've got, like, I don't know, 100 units, and you're like, wow, this feels way better. Like, if you're dubious about whether or not it's a good change, you should just play the mod. I think you'd find that if you like strategy games, if you like building armies and attacking other armies, I think you'll find that it's a net improvement. You still have to make intelligent and strategic decisions about when you build factories, and because we have so many new units and structures, you have more decisions to make as to do you double down on barracks, or do you build a fulcrum, or do you go into starport tech, or do you whatever the case may be, right? We're using Terran as the example here just because it's easier. I just see it as an objective upgrade in achieving scale with your armies in an RTS game. The only real downside is that supply obviously contributed to early game pacing, but you can fix that by making your early game, like, there's many paradigm shifts that have happened within Cosmonic Brood War. And to get to the point that we're at now, we've revised how resources work entirely. We've removed supply, we've removed upgrades, we've made tech ups much more deliberate and expensive and significant. And we've added, I don't know, like over 100 new units and structures to the game, and we're only adding more now. So what I'm getting at is basically, of course, the early game and pacing in general is probably a bit out of whack because we're dealing with so many different things that now we need to sort of recalibrate. And that's what part of this update is going to be, is like recalibration of what we have. But aside from enforcing an early game pacing or being used as a tool to do that, I don't really see what the upside of having supply is at all. I especially never understood a hard cap of 200 food. That always seems to me like it's for engine performance or something. It's like, oh, we can't have large-scale battles in this game. That's really silly. So yeah, definitely not a fan of that. Even before we removed supply, we removed that as soon as we could, because the idea was we need like 300, 400 food or whatever. Like, we want you to be able to get absurd amounts of units. And then obviously we realized eventually that supply was hindering that as well. So